Well, as many of you know, there were POW camps all over the United States during the World War II era, and the Southwest Desert was no exception. Today we're going to visit one of those camps, or where it used to be. Welcome to Discover This.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Out here in the desert of Arizona in January 1942, the U.S. government paid $4 million for 500 acres of land right here. And starting in 1942 and into early 1943, the biggest prisoner of war complex that was ever built on American land was built right here, just north of Florence, Arizona. This camp had lots of barracks, a swimming pool, a bakery, 486-bed hospital, a library stocked with Italian and then German language books, and 20 theaters. Volleyball courts and basketball courts were also built, along with, of course, the guard towers. In May 1943, the first prisoners arrived. They were Italian prisoners of war, and when the Italians arrived, each prisoner found a letter from the camp commander on their bunk. The letter from Colonel William Holden had been translated into Italian. It read, Now the Italians acclimated well to the desert climate. In fact, they ended up creating an 18-piece orchestra. The Italians preferred to play soccer as their recreation, and some of the best Italian players were allowed to play matches against the local teams made up of migrant workers. And some would sing opera while working around the camp. In September 1943, when Italy surrendered, many thought the Italian POWs would be sent back home. However, many were still at Camp Florence until roughly May 1944. Now, what was Camp Florence back then is now a 55 and older residential community, and right off Highway 79, again just a tad north of Florence proper. The German POWs started arriving before all the Italians had left. So the camp had to be segregated, especially keeping hardcore Nazis away from the more docile inmates. The Germans earned money by doing various jobs around camp. The German POWs started arriving before all the Italians had left, so the camp had to be segregated, especially keeping the hardcore Nazis away from the more docile inmates. The Germans earned money by doing various jobs around camp. One of those jobs was picking cotton in the fields here for 50 cents an hour. Each man picking cotton would average about 54 pounds of cotton picked each day. Camp guards noticed there were two kinds of Germans here. The draftees, who cared very little about the war, and then there were the hardcore Nazis. By and large, guards said most of the Germans were decent guys who worked hard and didn't want to sit around doing nothing. Guards in charge of the work parties had between 23 and 28 prisoners to keep an eye on. Each guard was given a carbine rifle with only 3 bullets. One of the guards recounted a story about a group of prisoners that arrived late one night. The guard asked the group if anyone spoke English. One man stepped forward and said, "Do you mind if I have a cigarette?" The guard was astonished at how good his English was, and then the prisoner said, "Do you remember when a pack of these was only 13 cents? The guard said he did, but how did the prisoner know what U.S. prices for cigarettes were back then? The German said he had lived in Cleveland for a few years before the war, and he had decided to visit his parents in Germany. That was 1939. When he arrived in Germany, he was immediately drafted." This memorial marker's right here at the archway to this camp, or where the camp used to be anyway. So this bell here, this bell originally hung in a stone chapel at the camp, and that stone chapel was built by the Italian prisoners of war. By 1945, Camp Florence had approximately 13,000 prisoners. In 1946, the camp was declared surplus. It sat for a couple years, but then was used as a state hospital and then as a minimum security prison for first-time criminals. In 1966, Camp Florence was done and was demolished. Many of the barracks from the camp were taken to Queen Creek, Arizona, and used as school classrooms. There are some artifacts on display at the First Pinal County Courthouse Museum in Florence. Most of them are German POW artifacts. Now, this book was written by a former camp guard. You can find it on Amazon. Well, that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for this story about Camp Florence, the prisoner of war camp out in the middle of the Arizona desert. Hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing the research on this. Very hard to find a lot of pictures about this particular camp, but anyway, if you're ever in the area of Florence, Arizona, off Highway 79, come into this 55 plus community and check it out. You can read the memorial plaque and all that kind of stuff. That's about all there is left. But I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this video, and we will see you on the next Discover This.